So we're talking about branding today. Branding is one of those words that are confusing. People don't know what it really means. It's kind of like marketing. Everyone says, oh, I do marketing. And then you're talking about promotions and you're talking about all these other things. So branding is like one of those words. It's a very simple concept, but it has so many complex meanings. So I wanted to start the talk off by doing a pop quiz. So I want everyone to put your backs to your seats, sit up, let's take a deep breath. So I'm going to show you a bunch of logos, and I want you to yell out the name of it if you know it, okay? So let's go get started. Oh, you guys can do louder than that. Okay. Good. Nope. Habitat for Humanity. Charity Water. There you go. Starbucks. Goodwill. This was a little tough. This is the mentorship program or project. United Way. Everyone should know this one, right? So what's interesting about this logo is that people spend $105 to $160 to go to Disneyland, right? But they spend that money not even knowing who this guy is or what he's about. Why do they do that? Why invest in so much money into something you don't really know anything about? It's because this isn't just a logo. It's not just an image. There's something bigger that this stands for. It's something bigger than all of us. It's something that embodies people to be a part of, something bigger than themselves. How many of you guys have a mission statement for your organizations? So how many of you guys are actually living that mission statement out? How many of you guys know your mission statement by heart? Okay. The funny thing about a mission statement is a lot of people create them, but they don't live them out. And so when you don't live them out, how do you know that you're creating decisions based on what your organization stands for? So with a brand, we're going to look at why a brand is important and how it can be useful for your organization. Brands kind of started off using, the wrought irons. They were branding cattle. It was a way for, cattle and products to be identified by who the maker was, the quality of the work, or who owned, the cattle per se. And then when the Industrial Revolution came, then it was about the product. It was about how did the product make you feel. It was about making the product more desirable because they wanted the desirability for the people to find a connectedness to that product. And then it moved to the company. All of a sudden, the companies were like, oh, it's not just about the product. Now it's about the whole entire company. It's about, a common look, a consistent look, look and feel. The companies wanted to have a personality. And then now it's moved to the experience of it, the overall experience. Social media played a huge part in this, where it created a two-way channel for consumers or donors to now contribute and participate with the companies that they follow. Think about before how companies would just advertise, fundraisers would just send out direct mailing pieces. Now donors and customers have the ability to talk back and say, no, I don't have to listen to you, or no, I don't have to look at your mail piece. So the times have changed. It's now customers have this ability to be a part of the conversation. And so organizations need to be aware of this, and they need to learn how to involve their donors to what they stand for. So let's get into what a brand is not, okay? Because there's a lot of myths of what a lot of people think a brand is. So let's get into what a brand is not. A brand is not a logo. Everyone thinks it's the logo. It's not a logo. A logo is your signature. It's the symbol that represents who you are. A brand is not a trademark. Those are legal marks. A brand is not your mission statement. That's a reminder. The brand is not a product. The products are the tangibles that reflect what your organization believes in. It's not advertising. Advertising are just channels of communication. And it's not marketing. Marketing is about managing the customer relationship. So how is a brand defined? There's a couple different ways. It could be looked at as a promise. It could also be a perception. It's a sum of all experiences. It's a gut feeling. It's a feeling that you have. You notice when people talk about our brands, oh, it made me feel like this. Like I made the decision to stop buying any other kicks except for Nikes. And I try to ask myself why. And it's because it makes me feel like I'm part of this group of people who like Nike. So I love this definition by a guy who's an expert in the branding field. And it says, it's not what you say it is, but it's what they say it is. Again, it goes back to that concept that now there's a two-way conversation. The people who touch your brand, they have to be part of the conversation because they can tell you what your brand is really about. So a brand is also an outcome. It's an outcome of all the experiences created by your brand. It's the idea that we conceptualize in our brain when we come into contact with an organization. So for example, like if I was in contact with your organization, if you were on your cell phone as we were talking and not paying attention to me, my perception of you, of the way you connected with me would be probably not as great. And then if I looked back at your values and you're saying that, oh, we're all about interpersonal relationships and about building trust and blah, 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 by you being on the phone basically led me to not trust you anymore. So that's kind of how a perception could be created. So why is this important for nonprofits? Growth, awareness, standing out. Every organization seeks to have these things. There are three goals for nonprofits. It's usually funding, social impact, and sustainability. Branding in the nonprofit sector seems to be going through a paradigm shift. What's happening is that organizations are starting to look at it beyond a fundraising tool. They're trying to see how they can strategically use it to help their organizations be sustainable. So what is the role of a brand in a nonprofit? There's a couple of reasons. Traditionally, the word brand was perceived as a bad word for the nonprofits because it had to do with money. It had to do with revenue. It didn't really have anything to do with social impact. And so what we need to do is start changing the way we look at a brand. Brand is also not about an image. A lot of times when I do talks like this, usually after the talk someone comes up to me and says, hey, can you take a look at my logo and see how you can help it? And I have to remind them, it's not about the logo. Your logo is just a signature. It's a symbol that represents what you believe in. The role that a brand plays in a nonprofit is driving long-term goals, strengthening capacity, and, identity, and cohesion, and also loyalty. This statement is by a girl named Natalie Kylander. She's an author that talks a lot about nonprofit branding. And I love the statement that she said because it kind of tells you what's forecasting or what's happening in the nonprofit sector right now. Is that pioneering organizations are now focused on, not on revenue generation, but more on the social impact. And here's the unique thing. This is also happening in the for-profit sector. A lot of the organizations now, in order for them to stand out and to become engaging and be inspiring, is they have to stop looking at revenues and they have to start looking at how to build trust with their customers. In the past, it used to be about performance, right? You guys remember that? When we worked, it was about how the company was doing, how it was performing. Now it's all about money. So now organizations are starting to realize that they need to get back to that. They need to find its true self, and they need to learn how to engage and to inspire people, because that's what's going to create loyalty. So another thing is, remember, nonprofits are businesses too. You guys are all entrepreneurs. You took a risk to start this organization or to meet a cause. You put yourself out there. You have a vision and a belief system that you feel is necessary to meet this goal. You employ the people that work for you, the people that volunteer with you. You basically teach them everything that you know so that they can help you realize your vision. And that's the other part too, is this is your vision. The people who work for you, they're there to work for you to help you realize that. And so remember, you're an entrepreneur also. And so one of the ways to help you organize and to create a sustainable business is to look at it as a business. The excuses I usually hear is, we're a nonprofit, we don't have enough funding, or we don't have enough resources. There are tons of free resources out there. It's just a matter of how you perceive your business. If you stop looking at it as a nonprofit and looking at it as a business, you'll be able to find the resources that you need to do what you need to do. Nonprofit leaders need a new model that allow their brands to contribute to their goals. Okay? You know, whether it's sustaining social impact, serving the mission, staying true to their values and their culture. So how do you build a brand? So I'm going to kind of show you some of the basics. Some of the ideas, some of you may have already heard before, but I want to kind of go into a little bit more detail and give you some more ideas on how you can establish some of these things. So you have to place your brand at the center of your organization. It has to be operationalized. You have to look at your brand now as a core function of your organization, not as a marketing tactic. And this is important because marketing always seems to get shut off. If something happens, if there's a lack of funding, what's the first thing to go? It's usually marketing and promotions. You have to look at your brand as capital, as the core function of your organization, because everything will depend on how you build out your brand. How I build out the brand is I call this thing called the 4 pillars of brand, and it represents 4 different attributes: story, culture, product, services, or in the nonprofit space, it would be programs, and then the community. The model, if I were to put everything together, kind of resembles the way an author named Simon Sinek talked about the golden circle theory, and it was his way to show how people are inspired by a purpose or a why. And so the goal here is basically to help an organization come back to its true, simplest form and to help them build their organizations from the inside out. Basically, you're leading with purpose. So the story is basically the why. It is the reason the organization exists. It embodies the purpose, the vision, the mission, and your onlyness statement, or your value proposition. So the ways we help organizations kind of find their purpose, you just kind of have to ask yourself some of these questions. Like, why does my organization exist? Why should it matter? And when you're talking about it, it's usually, because a lot of times when I ask people, what do you do? They always tell me the what, but they never tell you the why. When you're trying to look for your vision, one of the assignments I usually get people to do is to write an obituary for their organization. Imagine your organization just folding within 25 years from now. How do you want your organization to be remembered? It's like one of the most simplistic things, but it will really bring out, how you want your organization to be. This is where the core values lie. It's where how it reflects the purpose of your organization. These core values reflect or shape the activities, the principles, the policies, the processes, everything that makes your organization work. This is where those values are held. When you write out your values, you don't want to write them using buzzwords. Oh, we're an organization that's all about integrity. We're an organization that's about innovation. You want to use verbs to describe those values because they make them actionable for people to actually do them. So for example, if you're a company that's about innovation, your value would be, we look at things differently. Or we look at them from different angles. Or if you're an organization about innovation, integrity, you don't say integrity, you say we're an organization that does the right thing. See how there's a difference between the buzzword and an action word. And the reason that's important is because you want the people in your organization to live out these values. So if they have verbs that they can actually do, it allows them to live these values out a lot easier. When you create these values, what I like to do is I like to tell people to pick about 5 values that they feel is important to them. Values that they live out themselves every single day. And the reason why this is important is because you are already living them out. These aren't values that you just kind of had to pick and choose or guess. These are the values that you stand by every single day. From there, then you would create a list of values that are important to your organization. What's important to the purpose? How do these values reflect your purpose? And once you have those values together, you integrate them together, and then you simplify it down to about 5 to 10 values that really reflect the organization. Because now what's embodied here is your own values along with what's true to the organization. And so it'll help you live out these values on a daily basis. And if you have staff, what I would do, if you don't have these values already in place, I would do the same thing with them, is have them give you 3 values that they feel that are important to them every single day. Then you would take the ones that are the most common across the board and then you merge it with the values that your organization embodies. Because this way, now they've contributed to your organization. They are a part of your team. They would be able to live out these values better because they believe in them themselves. So your products are the tangibles. These are the services, the programs, the fundraising campaigns, the marketing, etc. These are the things that people can touch and feel. These are the items that people see. So for example, your marketing campaigns or your fundraising campaigns, they would reflect everything that your organization stands for. A lot of the times I work with organizations and they always like, oh, I have to create this new campaign. I always have to figure out, what I'm going to call it or what I'm going to do. By understanding who you are, why you exist, and what values you hold, you don't have to worry about trying to create new concepts for your fundraising campaigns, because everything you will do now will reflect those values. So, for example, your fundraising could be, maybe it's a direct mailing piece. What would you put in that? You would put stories that reflect the values of your organization and how, how people's lives are being transformed. They validate everything that you say and do because you want them to be true. And also it helps you design programs a lot easier. Most of the times you're trying to develop programs to help cater or meet a need. Understanding who you are, why you exist, can allow you to, create programs that really fit your model. Community is everyone that touches your brand. It's everyone that participates in it. So your first community are your employees, your staff, your volunteers, your board members. The second community in your system is your donors. Your third community would be your vendors, your contractors, your sponsors. And the reason why this is important goes back to what we talked about, is because of the way social media has changed the landscape of communication. Your chain of command or the way you communicate is important because the people that you're catering to have the ability to talk back. They need to participate in everything that you're doing. This is a movement. A movement is where everyone is embodied in what you're doing. So you need to figure out ways to get them involved and to allow them to participate. So some of the ways we do it is, create a donor advisory board. You already have a board, but creating a donor advisory board could also help because you can find out who are the people that are contributing the most. And you can group them into this little category of people that you can actually get data, intel, ask them questions, see what you're doing correctly. They can provide you with stuff that you may not have even thought about. So creating an advisory board like this can provide you with more information that you would never get from like a survey or any other form of like data. Also remember social media, it's a two-way street now. So everyone in your community would have the ability to participate. They become evangelists for your cause. They are the frontline people for what you're trying to do or what you're trying to accomplish. One of the ways we do it also is, you can create a series of State of the Union addresses. So I was just at my church. We had a big State of the Union address where they basically went over and reminded us what the purpose was, what the vision was, what the mission was, what they were going to do within the next 4 months. They also awarded the people that reflected and embodied the values that they hold true. And so what they did basically with these little roadshow type things is they demonstrated how the values and how the brand was put into action. Because then by doing that, it allows everyone to see how they fit into the bigger picture. Another idea would be also to bring in speakers to talk to your teams. Speakers like myself, I love talking with organizations. Bringing in local speakers that allow your community to learn something. You think of the ways people are inspired. They're inspired by learning, discovering, seeing new things. If you provide them an environment to do that, you just create a more engaging community. And this is the hardest part. Building out your brand is like one of the most easiest things you can do. It's the most simplistic things you can do. The hardest part of it is living out the brand. Your brand must be living and breathing. It has to be like a human. It can't be something you check off a task list. Everyone in your organization is responsible for your brand. And that is the reason why everything has to be built from the inside out. Because people that are part of your organization, they can make or break your brand. So for example, if I were to ask one of your reps, what is your mission? What are you trying to do? And I'm a $1 million funder. If they don't know how to answer that question, why would I end up working with you? You basically just kind of ruin the communication connection there. So that's why it's vitally important. So what are the outcomes of building a brand for your organization? I mean, it's the simplest one. You build an inspiring and trusted, authentic brand. Being authentic isn't, hey, I want you to be authentic today, so go out and be authentic. You just can't do that. You have to do these steps in order to become a trusted, authentic brand. It'll help you stand out. No one else will have your purpose. Your purpose is the one thing that will separate you from anything else. Anything that you have right now, someone else could also be doing the same thing. So if you have a multitude of organizations doing the same thing, why would a donor or a giver want to give to your organization? It'll help you stand out because you already know who you are, and that's the biggest differentiator. And it also will help you, find more like-minded people, your funders, your donors, your board members. A lot of the times, you find volunteers that want to volunteer, so you'll pull them and have them work for you because they'd be willing to work for free. But you can't do that these days. You have to really look at the people that you're bringing on board and seeing if they really will reflect the values that you guys hold true. And that's vitally important because it'll help you prevent a lot of communication problems. It'll help you have a group of people who are leading in the same direction. Also, it'll be easier for you to write your fundraising plans, your grants, etc., because now you know exactly who you are and how to communicate that. Most importantly, you're going to earn loyal supporters. Remember, everything you're trying to do here is to create alignment. You're trying to create a way for people to be a part of the bigger picture. Now, there's something that happens is when you start an organization, you usually start the organization with so much passion, so much excitement. You're ready to go. You start doing everything that you're doing. But for some reason, you get to this point where all of a sudden you get pulled back. You become mediocre. You're not thriving anymore. So your brand allows you to help you get back to that. And I think that's one of the biggest assets you can do for your brand. See, my purpose when I started my company was really to help people find joy in the work that they do. I believe that if more organizations knew how to inspire, more lives would be fulfilled. So I hope I inspired you guys today, and I just want to thank you guys for having me here.